legally after Tyler, we're not recording.
Okay, I feel now I feel nervous now that I know legally that I've been told that it's recording.
Riki Ratchman, thank you for coming on the podcast finally, and I'm so sorry for pestering you for months. It feels like.
No, it's not a problem. I mean, I've been running around so much, so I'm glad that we finally got to work it out. This is probably the first. This is the first interview I've ever done for Ireland. Well, I know it's everywhere, but in Ireland, I think.
I think it's Ireland too. But talk to me, though, Riki, because you've had a whole varied career from TV presenting. You worked in radio for a while, but now you've got, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, but you have one of the better podcasts out there, and it's called the Cat House Hollywood Podcast. And for a big fan of rock and roll like me, like put it like this: the first episode was about the the Guns N' Roses Motley Crue feud, and then it ended with a clip of Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue playing together. So, what I would say to you is, Rick, is how is it for you now moving into podcasting?
The podcasting is different because I still do radio, and if anybody wants me, I'll do TV. But the cool thing about the podcast is this is something that I'm purely doing. The same reason that you're doing it is, yeah, it would be really nice if these shows got huge and we made money, but I'm not making money. I'm doing this because it's fun. And to know that so many people have really been liking this podcast, I've been thinking, or the idea of writing a book, and now I don't have to do it because I can just tell the stories. And rather than being a reporter reporting on stories that I heard about, this is stuff I know about, or having other people telling me the stories that they witnessed. So it's all true. And to hear that so many people like it is really flattering. I mean, it's really, of any of the things that I've done, because I record it, I write it, I edit it, I do everything myself. And to hear that people like it really makes me proud of the product. And I think the next episode that's going to come out, I think people are really going to dig, because that deals with David Bowie's night at the club.
Yeah, that's the one. That's why I'm glad I was able to get you when I could, because that one is going to, frankly, blow the fuck up. Like David Bowie versus Axl Rose. Clickbait alone, that's going to get downloaded regardless of the content.
Right. And the thing is, I remembered very, very little of the story. So I had witnesses, recap what happened. And as you'll hear, I don't want to give too much away, but when you hear the show, the thing that you're going to realize is this was not a good time for David Bowie. And I mean, but there isn't, reporting this story, not reporting, having people tell this story of Bowie at the Cat House is in no way to talk poorly about the man now that he's passed away, because there isn't a person that walked in the Cat House that wasn't a fan of David Bowie. But we've all had times that weren't the best, and there was a time in the 80s that wasn't the best era for David Bowie, and this recaptures that time. It's not to talk shit, to talk badly about anybody. It's just recapturing a part of history that was pretty ridiculous. That was amazing that this actually happened at the club.
Are there any stories from back then that obviously you can't tell on the podcast, because those were some crazy fucking times?
I don't know yet. I mean, there are a couple stories that are personal things that I haven't told yet because they're just really messed up, and I don't know if I will. I probably will. I mean, there's very little that is off topic, but the thing about the show is that we're starting to realize every episode is it was all based around the club, but a lot of these things happened outside of the club, with episodes of being at, Tommy Lee's wedding, or my history in the LA punk rock scene, or just, being at Nicky's house the day after he OD'd. And it's I hate to say it's like a tell-all, because it's not. It's just us all reliving a certain era that was really incredible. And more stories. There's going to be more episodes that might not even talk about bands at all, that are going to talk about, the struggles that some of us had, and, what some of us did for a living, or what pop culture was like then. I mean, it's really taking us to a trip back in time that really will never be able to be duplicated. because it was amazing. It was sexy and dangerous. It was great.
But tell me this, because pretty recently, for the first time, it debuted on TV here in the UK. The decline of Western civilization, the metal years.
Right.
Uh, I fucking loved it. But one thing I'm going to ask you is, what did you think of the final product?
Well, that was at a time the Cat House had been open for 1 year. We filmed my segment in the afternoon, and I was just totally loaded. I mean, I was drinking in it. I watch it, and I talk differently. I think I look very feminine in it. On my mannerisms, I was just drunk out of my skull. But this is, you're taking these people that I still, even though we were in our 20s, I look at as us being kids, and you put cameras in them, and you don't realize, look, they're just asking us about this era, and we're defining this whole scene and era, and not realizing, like, wow, I'm going to look like an idiot. But it was funny. I mean, I think the people that take the scene too seriously didn't like it, but I never have taken any of it seriously. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be goofy. It's supposed to be dirty and dingy, and I like looking back at that because of the ridiculousness. For the people that look back and were big parts of the 80s and never ever transformed into something different, that's when I see these people that are in their 50s and 60s with tight black leather pants and the hair, I'm like, okay, really? I mean, I still think I'm pretty much similar to the way I was, but you got to change. And it's taking all of our youth and putting it up on a big screen. And it was a crazy time where we didn't think it would be something that we would talk about 20 years later.
Well, were a lot of the guys being interviewed in that film coked up? Because, frankly, Brett Michaels seemed really, really high.
I don't know if they were. I mean, they seemed so wasted in that. Like Cece, I'm sure he was probably high. I don't know, but that's also at a time Poison was the first band of our era that really broke, and they had just started to break, and they filmed that just as they were starting to get a little bit of notoriety. So it was all pretty weird, but yeah, they seemed like they were high. I don't know. I can only tell you that I was. I can tell you for sure that I was, and I'm pretty sure Chris Holmes was as well.
Was the strip really as wild as they say? Because have you ever heard the story Bruce Willis told about the walking down the LA Strip?
Oh no.
He said that, well, frankly, I think this was after Die Hard or Moonlight and whatever. He said that this, well, not a groupie, this woman fan came over to speak to him, and they said, so like a group of people made a circle to block the view, and she blew him right in the street.
Yeah, I mean, do I believe it? Yes. Was it crazy? It's what it was. And the thing that's so different is, like, I ended up opening up a cat house in Arizona several times. And when we would go to Arizona, you had the people from Hollywood that would go to Arizona that felt like they could get away with much more. And then you had the people from Arizona that said, hey, we've got to live up to this Hollywood-like style. So, I mean, there was a beer cooler, and I remember a girl that had no problem just giving oral sex to whichever guy would come in. And now when I tell the story, it's like disgusting. The Me Too movement. How could you victimize this woman who wanted to be in that position? And it was all fun. But you look back at it now, I can look back at it and say, wow, that girl, she probably blew like 10 guys. She probably had, some serious abuse in her past, and there were some mental issues. But back then it was like, dude, this girl's giving blowjobs in the beer closet, and you didn't think of it that way, or the ramifications. I mean, some of these stories that we're going to tell are going to sound so disgusting and sexist, and they were, but that was that era. It wasn't like we were taking advantage of obvious victims with abuse. I mean, some of these women, many of the women and we're doing a show pretty soon with Charisse, which is Vince's ex-wife. And it's not necessarily just to do tell all and the truth about the dirt. It's to talk about the way the women were at the time. And even though a lot of the women may have been looked upon as being sex objects, many times they put themselves in that position. They wanted to be. They know they were the queens. They knew they were the power. And there is nothing wrong with going out and having sex for fun, as long as you're not forcing it on somebody or manipulating somebody. You're just going out and getting off. And it was, people put themselves into that situation, hopefully voluntarily. And we didn't look at it as like, oh my God, this girl probably was abused back then. How can I do this? It's like, no, let's do it, you know?
But that's the thing that always makes me laugh, when you can feel yourself maturing based on how you think of women. Because it used to be, when I was younger, if I seen a girl wearing very little, I would think, oh, look at that slut. I bet she's a whore. I bet I could get her and all that stuff. But nowadays, if I see a girl wearing very little, I think, oh, look at her. She looks cold. Should I give her my jacket? She might need to go inside.
Yeah, or you go to strip bars and it was like, look at those tits. And then it's like, oh, your dad didn't love you enough. Or maybe your dad loved you too much. I don't know what the problem is, you know?
But do you think a lot of that music from that scene has aged well?
Um, it depends what you say aged well. Does it sound current and vibrant, or does it sound dated? There's nothing wrong with it sounding dated. If I'm going to hear a song by Elvis Presley or Eddie Cochran, yes, it has that feeling of being old and from the 50s, but that's good. And hearing some of this stuff, some of the bands, I hear songs that I think are just stupid. And I thought they were stupid back then too. But when I hear certain bands like a Skid Row or a Cinderella or anything older from Megadeth or Suicidal Tendencies, to me, it just sounds like really, really good music. I love it. And I don't have a problem saying I like new music or I like old music. I like, the starting of episode 9, which hasn't been released yet. I talk about the genres of rock and roll, how everything to me is rock and roll. Like Lemmy said, they asked Lemmy, is Motorhead punk rock? Are they metal? And Lemmy said, Motorhead is rock and roll. To me, it's all rock and roll, whether it's goofy and dated and sounds silly, or if it's, heavy and current and political. I don't care. It's just rock and roll.
But of course, you also did some work for WCW wrestling, and I'm a big wrestling fan. So I've got to ask you, and if you want to name names, please do. But who's crazier, wrestlers or rock stars?
Ooh, I will tell you, in the times that I was with WCW, and this I've never said, I've never said this anywhere. There was a time that I was with WCW that we would all go out at nights, and a lot of people would take ecstasy. And they would take ecstasy and be out. There aren't a lot of them. There were a couple of them. But if you chew ecstasy, a couple days a week and you keep doing it, it takes your toll and it beats you down. And there were people that were getting just fucked up a lot. We had some great times. I loved working in wrestling. I felt like I didn't get utilized as what I thought I could have done. Instead, I was a guy talking about foot spray at spring break when I'd been out of high school for like 20 years. But I think there are a lot of similarities in wrestling and rock and roll, but without a doubt, rock and roll. I mean, you don't hear a lot of beautiful women saying, I'm going to go to WrestleMania because I want to try to hook up with some of the wrestlers. I mean, you beautiful women, do go to rock shows to meet rock stars, but there are a lot of similarities whenever you're in anything. And it's the same thing with wrestling, with rock and roll, or racing or basketball. When you're a high profile person and you're traveling from town to town, there are women there. And but with rock and roll, if you showed up on stage fucked up, that's okay. If you're jumping off the third rope and you're fucked up, there's going to be trouble. So I'd say rockers obviously are a little bit crazier and can get away with more. And wrestling, you have to suck it up and also appeal and be family friendly for kids. But there were times at spring break that it got crazy.
But tell me this, because of course you hosted the brilliant Headbangers Ball on MTV, and you've done radio and stuff, just and podcasting for a while. But what's it like for you to be the interviewee instead of the interviewer?
With you, I like it because I'm having fun. I don't look at it. I don't look at anything as interviews. I try when I talk to people, especially now out of MTV, And when I do interview somebody, it doesn't matter what they earn. I don't try to do interviews. I try to have conversations. I just try to sit and talk to somebody. And if me and you were sitting at a pub and we were talking about wrestling or talking about rock and roll, this is the way it would go. I think with a lot, because I've been doing a lot of interviews lately, not only because of the Cat House Hollywood podcast, but because of, a new love and passion for the music of the, 80s, 90s. And sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's fun because I get to bring back some of that era that was lost, and I kind of let it go and realize, how lucky I am to have been in the position I am. For me to say, yes, I got to hang out and talk to AC/DC, then the next day Aerosmith, and then I'm hanging out with Slayer. I just say it because that's what I did. When I was young, that's what I did. But realizing, wow, I listen to the radio, and I've had good times with almost every band playing. And sometimes when I do interviews or stories like this, I get to think like, holy shit, God, I'm lucky that I got to do this stuff. And especially with the Cat House, because the Cat House was something that I didn't really talk much about for a long time. And, I don't take all the credit saying, well, the Cat House was here because I did this. I'm just lucky I put it in the right place at the right time. It doesn't hurt that, bands like Guns N' Roses were my friends, and they helped elevate the Cat House to what it was. But I'm lucky because it wasn't a club set up by promoters and business people. It was a club set up for the people that wanted to go out and wanted to have fun. And so when you call me and we talk about the Cat House, it feels good because I am so proud of what it is. I mean, I sell Cat House shirts worldwide daily, and that's crazy. How many clubs, there aren't a lot of clubs. You've got your CBGBs and you've got your Studio 54s, but the Cat House doesn't have a publicist or an agent or a branding license. It's just me. So the fact that people in Ireland are curious about the Cat House and that era, that's pretty damn flattering. Because like I said, I'm sure that if I had a marketing manager or somebody that knew what they were doing, it'd be bigger, but it'd probably be blown out in a year and nobody would care anymore,
But let me ask you this, because you mentioned AC/DC there, and of course, one of the best interviews they did was on Headbangers Ball promoting their live album from '93, I think it was. And I think it's safe to say you're an AC/DC fan.
Is there anybody that isn't?
Exactly, yeah. But the question I'm going to ask you about them is, what do you think about the fact that AC/DC takes so long to bring out a new album that even when it's usually pretty decent, they don't play any of it live?
This is why. I mean, I remember when I thought, I remember I used to have this Jeep and I used to play Heat Seeker. I loved that song Heat Seeker, and I used to call my Jeep the Heat Seeker. And that to me was new AC/DC, But I think you're in the minority. I think when you go to AC/DC, you want to hear the old classics. You want to hear a little bit of everything, I'm excited that they're going back out on the road with Brian, and they've got an album that's going to be out. When you've got a catalog, how do you choose what you're going to play live? How do you, because there's people like, for instance, if I would rather hear, I can think of a lot of songs I'd rather hear than Black and Black. But if you don't play Black and Black, you've got to play the classics. If I saw Aerosmith, I would love it if they didn't play Walk This Way and didn't play Sweet Emotion and played anything, because I've heard those songs so many times I don't want to hear them anymore.
With AC/DC, I don't understand why they don't play Touch too much. Like, they haven't played it since the '70s.
But you got to understand, AC/DC's got such a huge catalog. There's oh, I don't know. It'd be fun if, I think it'd be interesting, and maybe AC/DC is a typical band that should do it. They should just put it online. We're going out on tour. Everybody pick the set list. That would be brilliant for AC. Don't you think?
That'd be genius.
AC/DC. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put it on Twitter today before you do. So, so I think that would be brilliant. AC/DC should do it. I would say Kiss, but Kiss is going to do whatever they want to do, so who knows? But AC/DC is a band that I think that they should do it like everybody pick their set list, and then it's like, oh, you didn't play, this. It's like, hey, you guys, enough people didn't want to hear it, so there you go.
Well, I'm just glad that Brian Johnson stayed in AC/DC because I worked for years to get my impression down. So to have to change it to another impression, I don't have enough time. But speaking of which, what was your reaction of when you heard and then when you possibly seen or heard Axl Rose as the lead singer of AC/DC?
Axl said that singing in AC/DC was way harder than singing in Guns N' Roses. So I went to go see him, and I didn't go there thinking, I know it's going to be great. I went there thinking, okay, let's see. And what I appreciated was what Axl did was Axl knew his role in AC/DC. Axl didn't talk on the mic hardly at all. He knew he was singing, and he knew that, hey, there's Angus right there. I thought Axl did a great job. I was pleasantly surprised, and I didn't know how it was going to be, but I thought it was great. Obviously, I think, you want Brian in the band. I think Axl did a great job, but I think if they did AC/DC, I thought it would have been interesting to bring a whole bunch of singers out with them. You could get, God, you could get Jesse from Jackal to sing an AC/DC song. You could get everything. Just don't have Celine Dion do what song Celine Dion did?
Shook Me All Night Long.
Oh my God! Oh, get it out of my head now, please. That was the worst thing I've ever seen, ever. I can still remember it. But if you had a bunch of different singers do it, I think it'd be great. But I thought Axl did a great job. He knew what his role was. He knew he was just singing in somebody else's band, and that's why he wasn't on the mic hardly at all. Which Axl, people that have seen Guns N' Roses know Axl likes to go on little rants at times. So. But I thought he did a great job. I had a blast.
But the thing is, and my boss is a insane Guns N' Roses fan, like just massive. And the fact that you were in the November Rain video, he's going to shit himself. But what do you think about the fact that with Guns N' Roses, there's so many like rumors and stories? Like, do you think that Axl's sort of media silence has backfired in a way, and that it's caused more rumors about him?
I don't know. Axl, me and Axl were very close, and I haven't heard from him for many years. Duff, I heard from maybe a week ago. Slash and I occasionally contact each other on social media. I am excited to see them when they tour this next time. I will go see them play. I don't know. I think all Axl needs to do is just get himself in shape, come back, and just like kick everybody's ass. We live in an era right now where a musician can say the slightest thing and it can go on social media and change so many different times till it's not the story that it was at all. Now we have Jakey Lee saying how he was supposed to replace Mick Mars, and Mick Mars is a racist, and this. I'm like, what you're saying? Who cares? I don't believe any of that, but it's just anybody can just come out and say anything, and then one of those little social media sites will pick up on it, and there it's all over the place. I'll tell you the one thing. The thing about the Cat House Hollywood podcast is nobody's going to say, well, these timelines are wrong, and this didn't really happen, and that didn't really happen. Everything on this show happened the way we saw it happen. The only exception is the Izzy Stradlin Charisse story that I think was in episode 4 or 5. I talked to Charisse, and Charisse told her story a little bit differently about what happened at the Cat House, and I believe that her story might even be more accurate. So we're going to have Charisse on the Cat House podcast pretty soon too, and it's not to slam Vince or talk about the dirt; it's to talk about the Cat House and that feud and just everything else. So
and this one sort of last Guns N' Roses Motley Crue notice for anyone that hasn't heard the podcast yet. But Riki actually watched the dirt with Gilby Clarke.
Yes.
And then they recorded their reaction to it straight after. So it's Guns N' Roses talking Motley Crue. Get fucking listed.
Yeah, that was That was I didn't even make it an episode. I just said it was a bonus one. And I went to LA, and I've known Gilby longer than almost any. I think I've known Gilby longer than I've known Tammy. And so we went over to my friend Keith's house, and we watched the Dirt. And then I said, Gilby, can I just turn the microphone on and let's talk about the Dirt? And he's like, yeah. And there were certain parts of the Dirt that were not correct, like especially Motley Crue's first show. But it's still, we both appreciated the movie, and it wasn't a documentary. And at the very least, what I hope the Dirt's going to do is get kids to listen to some of those old Motley Crue albums, because holy crap, I love Shout at the Devil. And I love the first record as well. So, yes, there are some certain timelines that are wrong and certain things, but it's not a documentary, and there's parts that are goofy in it. But I thought the movie was fine. I thought it was fine. I mean, there's a lot of anytime anybody watches a movie about rock and roll, and it doesn't matter if it's The Dirt or if it's Lords of Chaos, I think that's good.
But tell me this, because of course with Headbangers Ball on MTV, in my opinion, and I'd love to know your opinion on this, but for me, I think that new metal, whatever that was called, and new metal music videos, I think that's what tarnished rock and roll in America. What do you think of that opinion?
I think people change. I mean, we tend to use excuses as why people aren't buying certain types of music anymore, and we blame it on a different type of music. Look, if I love heavy metal and I like old school thrash, and then all of a sudden people aren't buying thrash, it's just because they're not. It's not because a new type of music came and eliminated the thrash. It's just, the media tends to pick onto what's ever hip and hot, but it's up to us, if we like our certain type of music, to keep on supporting it. If people, I mean, when they did that Big Four tour with Anthrax and Metallica and Megadeth and Slayer, they were selling out huge arenas. Okay, well, does that mean that metal's dead? No, that shows that it's still vibrant. There's big hard rock, heavy metal festivals all over the world with old bands and new bands. And I mean, I've gone to shows where I've seen Cheap Trick and then Suicidal and then, I don't know, Disturbed or somebody, and the crowds are still going nuts. So it doesn't matter. It's just like, I like rock and roll. I don't care what type of music it is, what type of genre it is. I think that things just change. And if a band keeps putting out the same stuff every single time, I mean, AC/DC is the only band that can keep on putting out the same stuff every time, and it's still okay. But if every band kept on doing the same thing, it's like, okay, really? This sounds like exactly the same, But sometimes it can backfire, so I don't know.
But just as we come up to the last two questions here, Ricky, and these are the big questions that everybody gets asked, and these can change it all for you if the wrong answer is given. So, are you ready for the big questions?
Do I have to? Is there another legal warning that this is being recorded?
Here's the first one. Who's the better band, Queen or the Beatles?
Queen.
Yes, that's the correct answer.
Now I'm going to say something that's really going to piss everybody off. I love Paul McCartney and Wings better than the Beatles.
What?
I love Band on the Run. I love that album. I can't say I was a big Beatles fan, but I really like Wings. But I like Queen much better than the Beatles.
Well, that makes up for the liking Wings more than the Beatles. But here's the big question, Ricky, and this could end it all for you. No.
I did it all. I've destroyed my career so many times. It's okay. I can always dig myself back up.
But this is the big one. The Spice Girls are back. Who is your favorite Spice Girl?
That is easy. Like, you would first think maybe it'd be Baby Spice, but it's not, because I think Ginger Spice has sex. Because I think it would have to be Ginger Spice. I think she was older, but I think there's pictures of her perhaps on the net without a top on, and I think that she fucks. Is that the correct answer?
I'm sorry, that's the correct answer. We were looking for Baby Spice.
No, it's not Baby Spice. It's not. Who are you gonna want? You're gonna want the cute little blonde girl that's la 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 la, or you gonna want a girl that almost has a little bit of Anne Margaret in her, that that like doesn't mind getting a little crazy.
Yeah,
Ginger
but
Spice is gonna be the craziest one.
it's the innocent ones that are the real savages when you get them behind the doors. But it's the outward crazy ones that have the mental health problems.
Did anybody say Scary Spice?
Quite a few, but
Okay, Dave, that's the wrong answer. Yeah,
yeah.
I as much as you might believe that I have the wrong answer, I think that we need to. Okay, I think that's going to be right after the AC/DC picking out their set list online. I think it's like if you had to be with one of the Spice Girls, even though most people are going to say who.
It's got to be Baby.
No, I would say Baby first, but it's got to be Ginger, just because I'm a man of the world.
Well, listen, Ricky, I just want to thank you for your time. It was so great to meet you and speak to you. But can I ask for one favor?
What's that?
One of my other podcasting jobs is I edit for this sports show called Keeping It 100. And two of the hosts on it, you may know them from working WCW. Or I don't know if you remember Conan and Disco Inferno.
Absolutely. I spent a lot of time with Disco Inferno, and I remember Conan. I worked a lot of time. Disco Inferno, we tried to do gimmicks together all the time with him ripping into me. They're both great.
Well, I work for them, and Disco Inferno, I've asked him for months to do my podcast, and he just won't do it out of being a dick. So anytime I get a guest on, I ask them if they can record a request for him to come on this podcast. Would you mind?
Okay, what's the name of the podcast?
It's Hughezy Hello.
It's Hughezy Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do one for Disco Inferno. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Dear Disco Inferno, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not going to do the podcast, It's Hughezy Hello. Is there something else you have to do at all? Is there anything else you have to do? What in the world are you doing that makes you too busy to do It's Hughezy Hello? You're the Disco Inferno. Maybe you'll get off early one day at the Waffle House and they'll let you do the podcast.
Ricky, that's the perfect one for me.
Oh, he's hilarious. He's great. I really had a good. I probably hung out with him more than any wrestler with WCW.
Do you have any behind the scenes dirt on him?
No.
Ah, shit.
No. I'll tell you this. Disco Inferno and I would go there and we would try to meet girls, and I think we would both be more on the list of guys that get turned down a lot. But I would get turned down more than he would. I got no action with WCW as far as I remember.
Yeah, you should see what he looks like these days. He hasn't aged at all, and he's still in incredible shape, sadly.
If you look on YouTube, there's videos with me and Disco Inferno.
I'm gonna send him this clip straight away.
This is great.